Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Welcome, my friend, to another episode of the Chasing Poker Greatness podcast. As always, this is your host, the founder of ChasingPokerGreatness.com, and today's guest is the co-host of the Grind Haus podcast, along with past CPG guest, Brian the Golden Blazer Frenzel. He's a Tournament Poker Edge coach, Twitch streamer, and lawyer, Jerod Smith. Jerod is a natural-born battler who mainly plays MTTs, but has been dipping his toe into my favorite waters, the cash game streets. The post-lockdown MTT grind has been going pretty well for Mr. Smith, as in April he had his biggest score to date in a $545 event at the Wynn for $62K. Jerod's one of my favorite people to have on CPG because, as his rabid fanbase on Twitch will attest, dude just calls it like he sees it, which is one of the characteristics I most value in my fellow man. In today's show with Jerod Smith, you're going to learn why sometimes shutting yourself off from human interaction when you're at the poker table is necessary, inside stories about life in the Grind Haus, why Jerod has been incorporating more cash game play into his poker schedule, and much, much more. So without any further ado, I bring to you professional poker player, coach, and podcast host, Jerod Smith. Jerod, welcome back to the podcast, sir. How you been, man?
Good. How about you?
I've been doing very well, keeping busy. I guess we'll start by asking, what have you been up to since the last time we talked?
Just grinding a lot of poker, obviously. Been playing a lot more live, actually a lot more live cash than, obviously since the last time we talked, we were kind of smack dab in the middle of the, most extreme part of the pandemic. So I'd been kind of locked down, stuck in the house, pretty much just playing online tournaments every day, trying to make hay while the sun shines. Kind of had that feeling where online poker was so good, but everybody was a lot of these recreational players that were home because of COVID were going to run out of money soon. And, some of the sites were kind of bleeding them dry, in my opinion, with some of the schedule and guarantees and everything. So that's kind of where I was then. Since then, everything, living in Vegas, everything's opened up a whole lot more, and a ton of people been here lately. So even, was on the strip last night, and just on a Monday night, it was just pretty much packed, kind of back to old Vegas, so to speak. So, that's been really good, but just pretty much been playing a lot of live cash and occasional Venetian and Wynn tournaments and such, and then just won a circuit ring online last Sunday.
Congrats, man! Congrats. Why the live cash game streets and not the live tournament streets?
So I play live tournaments a fair amount. I mean, that was kind of my bread and butter. I mean, I mix between live tournaments and online tournaments for the most part, but I'd actually been on a pretty big downswing online mostly, and then I wouldn't call it a big downswing in the live tournaments, but I just hadn't really done too much since the live tournaments kind of came back. So, and those can add up a lot quicker. They're just the lower end buy-ins are higher than the buy-ins, than the higher end buy-ins that I play online, of course. Like even a 400 live is like a low buy-in soft tournament, and I really don't play I don't play much over 215s, some 325s or something on Sundays. So had been kind of going on a downswing, so it's pretty hard to downswing in live 1-3 and 2-5 cash. People are just they're like literally giving it away. I mean, you can do it. You can downswing. You can run bad. Variance will get you, but it's when your win rate is something absurd, and I'm not even very good at cash, I would say, but people are I was still winning it somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 to $50 an hour in 1-3 and 2-5 combined. So it was kind of just to make sure I keep some steady income going to pay the bills and everything, and then just kind of play tournaments to try and make a little bit more profit.
I'm not sure if like the variance of MTTs is such that like just you could play live MTTs the rest of your life and not really know what the expectation ought to be.
Definitely.
How have you been enjoying the live cash game streets? Like you said, I guess you're just not doing dumb things and making money.
Yeah, it's a grind. I mean, I definitely some days better than others. I think it depends on kind of where I'm at, like location wise, what casino I'm in. So for the most part, so we live right down the road from South Point, and South Point's like a locals casino. A lot of the dealers from other casinos play in there, and just kind of local bad rags, and you don't really get the tourists as much, but you just kind of get the local degens that play in there. And they actually have they have a 1-2 game that they spread, which is like a $300 max buy. Then they have 2-3, which is a $600 cap, which it's super rare to see a casino have like 1-2 and 2-3 or 1-3, whatever, like a $2 big blind and a $3 big blind. Yeah. And then they also have a 3-5 game that they spread, which is like their 2-5 but with an extra dollar in the small blind, whatever. They have a 3-5 game, which is odd, but so the 3-5 game doesn't run all the time. Sometimes it gets one table, and it's like all regs. Just they're not great, but it's like all regs, and they're just kind of passing money around and paying the rake. And the 1-2 game gets all the like nitty old dudes and everything. So the 2-3 game with the 600 cap just turns into this remarkable game. Like it's like incredible. I could not believe it. They're taking a $2 promo drop, and I was still making just like an absurd hourly in that game. So I don't enjoy playing there as much as say, kind of spend the rest of my time at the Wynn. Their 1-3 game is a 500 cap, so it plays closer to 2-5 other places and everything. And my experience is the people that play at the Wynn are kind of too rich to fold, so to speak, a lot of the time. So that's been good. And then occasional 2-5 at Caesars, which is also a 500 cap game, which I find that the 500 cap game is good for that game because people want to be deeper, so they buy in for 500 and then they just blast off trying to build the stack for literally no reason. Like it doesn't do anything, whatever. So yeah, it's been good. It's just like I said, it's a different kind of grind. It's nice to mostly go home with more money than you walk in with, never a ton, but usually a little. And it's the inverse of tournaments where you mostly lose a little bit of money and then every once in a while win a lot. So it's definitely a nice balance, to my life. Definitely to have that.
Any thoughts about, moving up to the 510 or the 10-20 streets?
No, I don't. I'd like to play a lot more. I'd like to play a lot more 2-5. So I think the first thing that I'll do when I want to quote unquote move up is I'll move up to 2-5 at Wynn. The 2-5 at Wynn's I believe a 1,500 cap game, and so generally speaking, stakes there play like one higher than what they are. Like I said, the 1-3 plays a little bit more like 2-5. The 2-5 plays a little bit more like 5-10. I think the 5-10 game is uncapped there. So I would probably move up to that game, or I don't really play at Bellagio, but I've heard some good things about that the 5-10 game sometimes gets absurdly good from a couple of buddies that play 2-5 there and kind of keep an eye on it. If a whale moves over there, they just jump in and and get out. So, but yeah, I think I would probably do that first. I would probably that'd be my stepping stone, and I want to have a lot more hours and probably actually start really studying, really studying cash just to battle with. There'll at least be some regs. Now if there's a game with two people that are halfway decent at poker, I consider it a bad game if I'm in it. It's like if I know two people and they're not just horrible, it's like, oh man, I should probably change tables.
So a student, John, who does Tactical Tuesday with me, spent like the last 10 days in Vegas playing the 5-10 games. And his story's kind of funny in that right before the pandemic, he was afraid of the 5-10. Like he was nervous about playing in the game. He was like a 2-5 grinder and basically started shot taking at 5-10 right as the pandemic kind of came on full steam, and then transitioned to online poker, got coaching from me, and basically just did the whole online experience, and went back this past week to Vegas to play some 5-10. And he was nervous before he left. He's actually playing like 5-10 online for a living now,
which is much tougher than a 5-10 live game.
Oh yeah, and he was like, basically he was like, it's kind of a joke, right? It's like the 5-10 capped games, even like the regs that play in those games just weren't really challenging. And then there were, he said like basically the worst live game that he played in was better than the best games he plays in online. And that was just sort of his experience with the 5-10. So I would say that, like, yeah, with some study, some time, 5-10 is probably like, you're probably costing yourself money by not playing in 5-10 right now.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. It's more, so I do have I do know, I see this, there's a game that actually randomly runs at South Point. They kind of treat it like a home game. It's some guys that kind of organize the game, and they, one guy schedules it with everybody, and they show up and they'll just spread this. It's open to, it's a public game. It's not like a private game or whatever in the casino. Like that was the big hot button like a year ago or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a public game. But they just spread it. It's like a 5-10. It's like a 5-10-20 game basically. And I've looked at that and it looks absurd. It looks absurdly good some of the times. I have a buddy that would buy action in it if I really wanted to play in that. I might take a shot on something like that at some point and just sell part of it just to kind of get the experience and see how it is. I mean, I'm not really, if I sit down in a game, I'm not really concerned. Like I would never sit down in a game and then get super nitty because of the amount of money that I have in front of me or anything. And that's kind of my fear with sitting down, in the first place in those games. Cause like if I find a good spot that, it seems like they're going to fold, right? Like if I find a good run out or whatever, I'll triple it off and do all that stuff. So, which is what you need to be doing to be winning in some of those games, some of the time. But yeah, like right now it's just 95% of the time value bet, and every once in a while, look at a guy that's clearly nervous to have $500 in front of him and just stuff it in his eye and hope he doesn't have the nuts. Like basically is kind of the. And sort of print money along the way. Like I said, it's pretty. I'm certainly not challenging myself and necessarily improving and doing that, but it's just low hanging fruit and pretty easy way to make the rent money every month. So
yeah, for sure. Just bear in mind, complacency. Right. Don't get complacency so that you're complacent so that your game kind of degrades over time. Sure. That's sort of a pitfall of like those super easy games.
Right.
So let's go back a little bit to the beginning of your career. And who would you say is the biggest influence in you becoming a professional poker player?
Trying to think back, like there were. It's got to be. It's got to be some people on. It's got to be some people on Twitch, because that's like really. That's where I got started. First got started like taking poker more seriously. Actually. I was playing poker for, funny enough, very very relevant right now. I was playing poker for Dogecoin. Is really the first time I like grinded it out. There's a I don't know if you saw, I tweeted the other day. It's my Bitcoin pizza on that Poker Sheebs site. There was a Dogecoin poker site. I was sitting at a table with 1.2 million Dogecoin, which is just like like $300,000 worth of Dogecoin right now.
Yeah.
I sold it all for like $1,000 of Bitcoin, which did well and has made me plenty of money and all that stuff. But just funny. But it's got to be some, Jason Somerville, I think, kind of the godfather of Twitch poker. He's really the first one that I watched, and then I got into it with some friends. We'd stream on Twitch this home game on that little crypto site. We'd just all sit up basically 20 NL cash game and shoot the shit and kind of.
What was it about Jason Somerville or those Twitch streamers that resonated with you in a way that you were like, I want to do that?
I don't think it was that, like, it wasn't that clear an epiphany or whatever. It wasn't like just one day I was watching and be like, man, I really want to do that. It was more just like that was entertainment. And so you end up, if you're watching, if that becomes your entertainment, right? I was interested in poker just as I like to play it and didn't ever consider it a thing that was going to be my career. But if you're interested in something and you watch a lot of it, you almost get better just by, osmosis, so to speak. Like you have kind of no choice but to start understanding some things a little bit more, than you maybe otherwise would. So it was nothing like that. I enjoyed the content creation aspect of it. I did always kind of think like, man, it's a shame that I never really got into like making YouTube, like being some sort of a content creator. And I didn't really have like video editing skills or want to take on the challenge of coming up with content like that. But when it was more in a live stream of consciousness, record everything type deal, that was more my strong suit, so to speak. So that's kind of why I got into that. And then it just sort of, when you have something like this that's a hobby and it's costing you money, or you're like breaking even or making a tiny bit of money, it just sort of automatically becomes the natural inclination to just try and get better, try and improve, and surrounded myself with some friends that were better than me, and ultimately got a little bit better and a little bit better. And next thing you know, it's like, oh, I could actually kind of make some money in this, and I really enjoy it more than doing anything else. But yeah, I would say Jason, obviously, and then really kind of came up just a little bit before me. He's a good friend of mine. Is Pav, all in Pav. He really, I watched him go from micro grinder in his mom's basement, like streaming on there, and turn into both, one of the top poker players and one of the top Twitch streamers, basically from the ground up. So I would say he was a pretty big inspiration. And like I said, he and I are good friends. So that was very cool to sort of watch him from the ground up. We used to host each other. I'd host him for 30 viewers and he'd host me for 200, so, but yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. The Twitch trajectory. I know that like Matt Staples also has like a pretty giant following now, streaming, and he kind of started from the micros as well, of like, he had his brother obviously to help him out with viewership and just knowing where all the buttons were, but really just like that journey from like starting out playing really small to leveling up and playing much bigger. I think that's probably a really cool experience for regular Twitch viewers.
Yeah, I mean, he's like one of the most impressive. Obviously, the most impressive of that not didn't happen on Twitch, but just like the most well known and impressive of journey from the micros up that everybody kind of knows about is Ali Mzirovic, of course, who's just like an end boss now. You know, like not only just a really good poker player, like a literal plays the highest stakes and seems to just win every tournament that he enters. You know, it's sort of obviously not actually the case, but really does seem like that. If you over the last 3 years, I mean, the kid is just remarkable, and he was playing, 50 NL online like not that long ago, and it's pretty well documented, sort of his journey up there. But Matt's got to be, off the top of my head, from somebody that I know, that journey is documented from the micros up to kind of the highest stakes online. I mean, Matt's got to be up there, and he's just, really, really impressive with how his game, has progressed and everything.
I have no idea how he does it.
I don't know how anybody does it like that. I mean, it's remarkable to me. I'm certainly lazy. That's my. But I don't want to say I'm lazy. I play a ton. I play more hours than a lot of people do in general. But putting in the time to study, I do it, but I don't do it nearly as much. Like if I could convert my work ethic to play, because I just enjoy playing and I don't enjoy studying. I mean, I think that's a common thing among a lot of players. I do this for a living because I enjoy playing the game. It is ultimately, at the end of the day, it's playing a game for a living. We call it the grind and everything, but it doesn't almost ever feel like that to me. But the grind part is the sitting down and studying and doing some other things away from the table to make yourself better. And I don't necessarily always have it in me to put in the kind of time that I would like to, or probably should, or whatever. So people like that I can very clearly see, put in that time, didn't just get lucky and win some, Sunday Million for Infinite or whatever, and that just launched them. Actually put in the time and just consistently get bigger and bigger scores. Clearly grinded it out off the table. That's honestly the most impressive thing to me, rather than somebody that can play a lot.
I mean, you for somebody that doesn't like studying, you sort of have built a good situation for yourself, right? Like living in a house where everybody plays poker, you kind of can't help but study and discuss hands and learn.
I mean, my roommate and I that sits, sits.
We can hear him typing sometimes.
Yeah, 30 feet from me. I'm in a different place from the last time where we were all three in the living room. I've moved to the kitchen now. He's in the living room, and Melissa's upstairs. Melissa's upstairs. Brian's downstairs. So we've got four of us. We've hit all four corners of the house here. But yeah, we. We send hands back and forth while we're playing. Like, just send a screenshot and talk about it across the room. Just like, all the time. Like, would you fold here in this spot? Like, does he ever have bluffs? Whatever. Just random stuff like that. Where, like you said, it's just built in. With your former and upcoming guest, Golden Blazer, with Brian. He and I more so. A lot of our hand histories are from live things, and they're more just like funny stories, so to speak. But there is a lot of those hand histories are really kind of how, in my opinion, you make the most money in live cash, and it's just like how to take the maximum money from the whale. Right?
Yeah.
There's like a ton of people that I always play with that like it'll be some reg. And I can tell that he's good, and I can tell that he studies, but he's just like, he's like trying to play back at me, and he's just like forgetting to take, he's like taking the same lines against me as he's taking against the whale. It's just like mechanical. It's just not like they want to play this, try and play, for lack of a better word, try and play like the GTO bot style, whatever. And they're just forget to take all the money from the whale. And it's like, this guy wants to give you his money. Like, he literally, if you asked him, he might tell you, yeah, I'm going to give all this money away. And then I'm going to, go up to the room and like, whatever, like that's what he's going to do.
Yeah. I got news for anybody listening that thinks that not maximizing profit against a whale is GTO, and the news is that's not GTO at all. You're fooling yourself, and the reality is against the weaker players, it's quite easy to devise winning strategies. There's not like a lack of ways to beat them, but it does take some effort in finding the best or the most profitable winning strategies. And that's where the focus should be. And it's like, why rest on your laurels when you're like beating a whale out of some money? Like, be greedy, try to maximize it, find the max exploits in these spots.
Yeah, I have a pretty funny story with this guy at the Wynn the other night, and he was drinking vodka sodas, and I had ordered some other drink, whatever, and he was like making fun of whatever I was drinking, like whatever, just because. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll drink what you're drinking with you, and it's like switched to his drink, and he ended up like a couple of times, talking about leaving or doing whatever, and then he, like, the cocktail waitress would come up and he'd order us 2 drinks and then just stay. Like, so we were having a blast, like having fun doing whatever, and ended up, I'm just like, this guy's got like $1,400 in front of him, and there's just zero chance that he's not going to dust it all off, and end up getting in a hand with him that on the river, I reverse straight on a 4-liner, and the dealer points to him because it's on him, and he just flips his cards over because he thinks like the hand's over and we're tabling it. He's kind of set, like that comes straight, and then he's like, "Oh." It's like, well, then I check, and then he like flips his cards back over. I'm sitting right next to him. I've obviously seen them.
Yeah,
like,
right.
He flips them back over, and then he checks. And I'm just like sitting there, and I'm like, okay. Like, how much money is this guy going to give me when he knows I've seen his cards, right? So I bet like $300, right? And he's just like in the tank, and he just looks at me. He's like, "You saw my cards, right?" And I was like, all I said was like, "I'm in a weird spot here, man. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, we're having fun and whatever. It's still, this is still my living." Okay, he's like, well, I got a set. I got a call." Like, pays me off. It's like, I was just thinking to myself, like, imagine bluffing in that spot, right? Like, imagine thinking that you should have a bluff when this guy has just shown you his cards and he has a set. Like,
yeah,
but
I mean, again, like we were just saying, it's easy to find winning strategies playing live poker. Sometimes they just show you their cards accidentally, and then
and that's it. Then I won the hand. Yeah.
Then you won the hand, right?
Yeah, right. Like that's the hand. That's the hand history. He showed me his cards, and then I bet. I was trying to figure out how much I should bet against him. Then he showed me how strong his hand was, and I knew.
Yep, you found the optimal size with extra little data point that he revealed. Tell me a story about either your favorite session ever or a very memorable session.
In recent memory, I think I always have these like really crazy, funny, and like good sessions for sure over the years. And I'm trying to think back, but there's one recently that was pretty absurd. I ended up, the game was kind of, it's like a Thursday night. It was during March Madness weekend, so I was just the first opening weekend of the tournament. I was just kind of living at the casino because that's one of the top 5 poker weekends in Vegas. This was like Thursday night after all the games and everything, and the game had kind of died, and I was probably getting ready to leave soon. And these 4 guys showed up and we're buying into the 1-3 game that's 500 cap with 500 chips, like with the $500 chip. So I had enough money on the table. I like changed one of them, and I would literally just like change one of these things, and within a half hour, win all that money back, and they would pull out another one, and I would like change it with them again.
Yeah.
But they were all four buddies, and they were like at different tables, like combining onto our table. And one of them kept calling me Larry, so I just went with it and was Larry that night. And they were actually, what was really funny about it is like they knew that I was good. They identified that I was good. They kept losing like huge pots to me, and they just the whole time we were just goofing around, like kind of shit talking each other, whatever, and just they were having a blast. And that was it was one of those things where like they just didn't care at all that that I was taking all their money just because we were having fun and I wasn't being like an asshole to them, which is I think kind of the common thing, and you deal with a bunch of stuff. Like one of them was like falling asleep between hands, and I'm just like tapping him, waking him up, before like, hey, wake up, whatever. But that I think that one in recent memory, I mean, I ended up cashing out, four purple chips in a 1-3 game. Like I ended up having to like that was strict honestly just because of the denomination of chip that they bought in with. That session was more funny because I've never had like a stack that looked like that in a 1-3 game before, right? Like it would usually be having like $2,800 in a 1-3 game would usually look a lot more messy than this just clean whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That one was good. Obviously that night I was saying that with the guy with the vodka sodas was pretty good. And then just I would say that's probably in recent memory my most enjoyable session for sure.
I have a funny little side story here. I was playing at Commerce this one time, and this kid ran it up playing 10-20 to like over 20,000, and he was torturing everyone all day. Not me. I was like somehow just avoiding his torture. He was like playing every hand and just torturing everyone. And somewhere around noon, he had been playing all night. Like he fell asleep. Like he slept for like 3 hours. Like we were just like waking him up in between hands.
Yeah.
And so he was like folding a lot more over these 3 hours too. He's like folding. And afterwards, one of the regs, a friend of mine, we were chatting about it, and he's like, he went insane for like 10 hours and then like fell asleep like
like at the table,
literally literally and figuratively.
Second wind.
Yeah. He literally and figuratively fell asleep at the table for 3 hours and then woke up and basically ended up dusting it all off over the next 5 hours or so.
But that's the best. You'll love a story with a happy ending. I've had a lot of like I just get an absurd whale play, lose the hand in some absurd fashion, and just think, okay, whatever, and then they just within one orbit just get up and you just watch them walk out. Like it's always so sad.
This kid, I think this kid was destined to give it back, and fortunately for me, I pretty much got all of it.
That's the best.
It was a very good session, with the cherry on top being that the regs or pros that I played with, one of them just said, "I hate you." When it all went down, "I hate you," and I felt very, very smug about myself in that moment.
I was on the opposite side of one recently where this game was super absurd mostly because of one whale, and there was a couple other people that weren't very good like at the table. It was like me and two regs, and we're just kind of like lying in wait, whatever. And early on I'd like flopped a set and check raise, and the whale and another guy came along, and the other guy like always has a flush draw on the spot. Like there was no question about it. And like the flush draw bricks out on the river, and like the whale lead shoves, I call, the other guy folds, and he's he just had a naked gutter that just spiked on it. It was like the most innocuous river. Just naked gutter just spiked it on the river like the whole time. It was like just this massive pot, whatever. And I ended up, like there all night. We're down to where we're playing 5-handed, me, 3 regs in this whale, and the game's still good just because of it. And I just watch him dust it all off to another guy I kind of know. And just sitting there like, oh man. And like the guy pulls out $500 more, sets it on the table. We're like, okay, we're still good to go here. And he just like sits there, and then he just like picks it back up and puts it back in his pocket and sits there at the table still. So we're just like playing each other, waiting, right? Trying to figure out what's going on here. Nobody's gonna say anything, right? We're just like, if he wants to, he just sits there for like 5 more minutes, gets up, goes and smokes a cigarette, comes back, grabs his stuff, and just leaves. I was like, oh no. I did the same thing to that guy. I was like, I hate you. But we had been talking about kind of like privately talking. I think I didn't speak very much English anyway. We'd been talking, and like, this game is literally any hand away from breaking. Like, we talked about that a bunch. It's like at any moment, this hand could all of a sudden, this game could just be done.
Yeah, it's sometimes, especially as it relates to fish or whales, you don't even know what to root for.
Yeah.
You don't know whether to root for them to double up, because it's sometimes
they might leave.
They might leave. So it's like, basically, I think I always root for like small wins and small losses. No big major swing either way.
Yeah, no blood.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right, because it literally could be that. So sometimes there's an infinite supply of money that they'll just keep rebuying. But if they get up, they know. I mean, most of these people, they have money. They're mostly intelligent people. Some of them have gambling problems. Some of them have drinking problems, whatever. But
some of them just like playing poker
some of them just
as
like
a hobby.
Poker, yeah, for sure. A lot of times they're successful people. They're intelligent. They're just not good at cards, right? Or they're just kind of degens or whatever. So it's like they get it. They know that they are losing, right? It's not like they're the ones. The whales don't think they're not whales. The like old man coffee types that slowly bleed out money over the course of whatever don't realize that they're losing money to the rake. Basically, is like essentially what they're doing, and they only play places with promos, right? So they're losing even more money to the rake. Like, they're losing an extra $2 a hand that they occasionally win. So it's like, but like the whales know they're whales. Like they have no confusion there. So it's like sometimes, like you said, they get up a little bit and they're like, oh yeah, I'm out.
Yep, I'm out, guys. See ya.
I'm gonna go see how it goes in blackjack. All right.
What's interesting about old man coffee and just humans in general is like there are resources out there that you could learn from if you were just willing to invest or put in some time or energy. It just boggles my mind that it's like, why are you this way when it doesn't have to be this way?
I don't think that that's the issue. I don't think the issue is lack of willingness to like put in the time. I mean, I think that might be a little bit of a part of it, honestly. Like in my experience with my dad, and like it's kind of as my dad gets older, there could be something that I know a lot about and he does not know very much about. Him like trusting somebody else's like opinion or advice on anything is just not. So like you could show all the numbers, all the everything, lay it all out there, and he's just like, no, I know better. Like, I'm right. So I honestly, I think it's more just that stubborn arrogance, right? And it's like just a general distrust for, kind of what others, that, a distrust for like, oh yeah, if that information was really right, like everybody would be good. So that information that's out there can't be right. I'll just trust me because I'm smart. Right? Like, I know.
Yeah, you know why the information's out there and not everybody's good is that very few people take the energy to execute and learn. It's why like the biggest misnomer as it relates to poker strategy is like, I could just say publicly things that I know will print money, and 99.2% of people would not even fucking believe me or listen to me or take it seriously.
One of the first times I met Nick Papillo, who's a good friend now. One of the first times I met him, I was just, I'd never do this, and he was totally right. I was just flustered in a satellite because I should have had a seat locked up, and because these people were doing these absurd things, it was like now jeopardizing me having a seat locked up. And I said something. I can't remember for the life of me what it was, but I said something like basically told them what a better strategy would be and whatever. And like break came, and Nick like walked up to me and was like, "Dude, don't tell them, don't tell them that. Don't say that. Whatever." Like he knows I play poker for a living. He plays poker for a living. He's like, "Don't tell them that." I go, "Nick, I could lay out a perfect strategy of exactly how to play these things. I could prove that it was a winning perfect strategy, and they still wouldn't listen. Like they still absolutely would not listen." And that was sort of. He just kind of looked at me and he just like shrugged, and then he just walked away. And then we get back to the table and he watched them like do all whatever, and then he just like looked at me and smiled. I was like, "Yeah, see, I told you."
Yeah, unless it's not something that becomes very apparent until you're in like the poker coaching scene and you see mistakes made over and over and over again. And it's like, what is happening here? Like we've covered this, and it's just like over and over. And you just realize that like, it's not as simple as just telling somebody, "Oh, do this." And then everybody just does that moving forward.
Yeah.
Like Nick Howard actually tweeted something out probably a year ago, and it was a question of like basically what are some of the bigger exploits or the mistakes that you see people make in cash games, and he just said very publicly his opinion, and I saw that and I immediately instituted what he said into my game. Like it was like overnight. It was like, oh, basically what he said was bluff more, call more on rivers. And I was like, okay, that's a thing I can do. I like bluffing and I like calling. And nothing was ever said about it after that. But like, it was just funny to me. Like he just lays it out there publicly, says what in his mind is the truth. And in my experience is also the truth. And people don't care. They're not even happy about it. Nobody's willing to execute on this information, and it just kind of boggles my mind.
I've definitely found myself like I do, I do study some things, I watching training videos is like the best way for me personally to study, because I can kind of, I like to see things visually, and that's like it's kind of a good medium for me. And then I can just like kind of go back in the video and like rewatch a spot or whatever if I kind of confused about something or whatever. But like, I definitely have picked up a lot of things that I have implemented into my game and seen work. But like lately, I've seen myself just autopilot reverting back to like old habits and stuff where it's like leaks that I feel like I've plugged or just kind of tiny bits of EV that I've found a way to get. And then I just like just check raising spots from the big blind with with just backdoor stuff and everything. Like I'd gotten really good at finding those spots, the Ryan LaPlante special, if you will, like kind of his. If you watch any of the Learn Pro Poker stuff, you'll see like that's like Ryan's gonna find check raise spots from the blinds with just total backdoor whatever, like all the time. Like he's just gonna that's like probably the biggest leak that he's gonna find with people. And I kind of like started to plug that, and like I literally noticed more recently that I'm like, oh, I'm not doing that again. And some of that may have to do with playing live cash and stuff where I'm just not doing that as much, because generally speaking, if they see bet, a lot of these archetypes are not just auto c betting. They just, if they see bet, they have it. And so you could just play accordingly. They're not going to fold to a check raise. But
yeah, the listener is probably going to get tired of me saying this, but like playing low stakes live cash game is a great way for your game to start deteriorating.
Sure.
And kind of just getting worse.
I do mix it up. Like I said, I still play plenty online. I'm streaming again now that I have a affiliate deal with Ignition. So I'm streaming again on Twitch. So I'm, I play online every Sunday, and I play at least one other day a week online. I'm still playing MTTs. I made day 2 of that 800 at Venetian this past weekend, and unfortunately dusted it off on day 2. But still playing plenty of stuff like that. But definitely, I go into just like some days I generally try to be pretty social. It's a lot harder now with the plexiglass and everything. But in general, like I was talking about earlier, the whales typically enjoy playing with me, which is, I think, a very good underrated skill to have. I don't do it because I like owe anything to the game. I think a lot of people have that XYZ is bad for poker, so you shouldn't do it sort of thing. And I've always been of the opinion that like you don't owe anything to the game just by like for its longevity or whatever. I understand the thought process that you do, but like I just don't. I see there's plenty of new whales coming in. There's always going to be more whatever. I don't personally think that. I do it strictly because like that's the kind of person I am. That'll make it more enjoyable for me. And then also it's for my own self. It's not for the game, it's for me. Like it's my own selfish interest. Like that's the reason I'm going to try to be enjoyable at the table, is that hopefully this guy that, just dusted off however much will want to reload and keep playing because he's having fun.
Yeah. And I think too, like I've always done it for me too, really. Yeah. If I really think about it, just because it's more fun to laugh. Yeah. I agree. It's a more enjoyable experience to have fun and, just have that experience, right? It's not a very fun experience sitting in the one seat with a hoodie on the whole time and shades.
Especially now because you're enclosed in plexiglass in the one seat, like on all sides.
Just being like a robot that doesn't really respond to anybody or interact. That's never really appealed to me. I guess different strokes for different folks, but like I enjoy having fun, getting to know people, and I value the experience of like spending 10 hours doing this thing.
I definitely about 10% of the time, sometimes it has to do with somebody at the table is driving me crazy and I don't have the temperament that I'm not going to eventually snap, or just that, just kind of how I'm feeling in my headspace. Like if I don't really want to play or whatever, maybe like 10% of the time, I always keep a tablet in my backpack and I'll just pull it out and just watch like a TV show the entire time. And, put in a 10-hour session or something, just doing that, where I know that if I didn't do that 2 hours in, I would just be like, I'm going home, like forget this, whatever. So I would say like 90% of the time, I don't do that at all. I'm just sitting there, no headphones, not listening to anything, just talking to people and kind of trying to pay attention to, you're playing one table. So it's like I think it's a pretty crazy leak that a lot of people have. Like you're playing one table and people just do not watch hands that they're not in. Like they just have no idea. They're just sitting on their phone doing whatever. Like I do it every once in a while, but like for the most part, I'm watching these hands because it's like if you see somebody catastrophically misplay something and they're still at your table, like it's not like you're playing 10 tables online where you're going to miss that kind of stuff. Like it was right there. It was right there in front of you. Like, you really shouldn't miss that sort of thing. So kind of for those reasons, I try not to like zone out and watch TV or listen to podcasts or something.
Like there's a cost, right? Like there's a cost to spending time on your phone and your iPad while you're playing poker, whether or not you're aware of the cost. There's an actual cost. You miss a data point and sometimes maybe it doesn't come into play, but then other times maybe your whole night, your whole session hinges on you paying attention to a hand that was played so that that sways a future decision one way or the other. And it's just like, it's free, it's sitting there, it's available. And it's hard for me to see somebody as like a professional poker player if they're not taking that seriously, because that's just like part of the gig.
There's a life EV cost though too, where just like the sort of enjoyment of zoning out for a little bit, kind of can
10%. I'm cool with 10%. You do your thing. When it's 75% or 90%, oof, that's a problem.
I see people like that all the time. I mean, there's a buddy of mine had tweeted about it. It was, I think, during March Madness weekend, like one of the top 5 Vegas weekends for poker. All these like local regs, still saw them sitting there, headphones on, watching their iPad, like not paying attention to anything. And it's like, you can still print in these games just by playing Super ABC, but like, you might win $10 an hour more if you're just paying attention, literally based on what you said.
Right. And that's the thing. Those people that do that will listen to this podcast. They will hear the words, and then they'll go to the table and they'll open their fucking iPad up.
Yeah.
Just like the other 80% of the times that they do it. Right. So again, like tie it back into, we can tie it back into like, you can say whatever you want, put it out there. Doesn't mean people are going to like take action and execute.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You've survived pre-flop boot camp. You've shot the fish in a barrel. Now, prepare yourself for the feeding frenzy. A comprehensive strategy for gutting every fish in your player pool. Data-driven hero bluffs, light call-downs, and perfect value bets that are maximally designed to hurt some feelings. Feeding Frenzy. Available now at chasingpokergreatness.com/feeding frenzy.
What's a purchase you've made over the past year that's been impactful to your poker game? Doesn't necessarily have to be like directly poker related.
What is the purchase that I made last year? Let me think about that for a second. Well, I bought the Barstool Sports hoodie that says it's only money. And that's been impactful in my poker game, because if I wear it, you absolutely cannot bluff. I've learned that information. I think I don't buy a lot of things, period. Like I'm a pretty like low cost. So especially during the pandemic, I'm like looking around my desk. Looking around my desk to see if I have anything that I've bought. And it's like almost nothing.
I'll give you a little bit of help. Chewy, Andrew Lichtenberger, was just on the podcast, and he bought a Tesla. And the way that he framed it was that he views the Tesla as a reminder that if you work hard, you put in the work, that like you do get rewards. And that's sort of how he frames that, which I think is I think that's just a really cool framing of like some purchase that has really nothing to do with poker. And yet it's a reminder that like you put in the work, good things happen.
I will say that, so I always save up my like poker comps and everything, and just go, Melissa and I will go to like a steakhouse and have like a really nice dinner versus, getting a bunch of like little $10 meals and stuff at the casino with whatever. So I think somewhat similarly, that's sort of a reward mechanism for the grind. That's something, again, I quote unquote purchased it with
your time,
with my time. Exactly. So it's just like even more important, it's like, you make whatever hourly, let's say you make $40 an hour and you get like $1 an hour in comps, right? Like that $1 is kind of nothing, whatever. But like once you put in a bunch of time just to sort of take that and treat yourself with it, whatever. So I would say that that's sort of along the lines of what you said there, just to kind of remind myself that like the grind it pays off. Whatever you just give myself a positive association with sort of all the hours rather than think of it as like, wow, this meal cost me 50 hours of my time and like whatever. But yeah, I would.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Again, it's just a reminder that like you're doing the work, right? Like you're putting in
Yeah.
the work, you're doing the time, and good things happen when you put in the work.
That or a massage every couple of weeks because my back and neck just absolutely get just destroyed by this awful thing. I need to purchase a gym membership because I'm just I walked from I literally like made myself walk from Venetian to Wynn after I busted the tournament the other day. I was like, I'm just gonna leave my car here. It's nice outside and walk over here. And I was just like some older lady pushing a guy in a wheelchair past me. It's just like I wasn't even walking that slow, but it was like really, really funny. I was like, I watched it, I was like, man, it's like I need to hit the gym now. Like this might be my wake up call that it's time to go.
Yeah, I felt that I was in pretty good shape in Yosemite, and me and my brother-in-law did like it was like a 12-mile hike at elevation, and we were like going up to the top, and like I was just dying. I was like, I can't even I feel like I'm just going to die. And this older couple who looked like they were full of life and energy and joy
Like walking
past
down.
us, walking down.
Yeah.
They were past me going down,
Yeah.
and I was like, hey, are we almost there? And they're like, no, not really. You still got a ways to go. I was like, oh fuck.
Yeah, I've basically I've seen that story before. I used to hike a bit in San Diego, and we definitely had that story before where we're just like, how on earth are you like totally fine right now? And I gotta sit on a rock and take a 20-minute breather here.
Yeah, another one was we were looking at the sequoias. We were doing a hike to look at the sequoias, and there was a family there that had this little girl who had to be like 6. And that kid was like skipping up the hills and like walking backwards, walking backwards, talking to us. I'm like, what on earth is happening right now?
Yeah,
like,
that kid just grew up hiking. Like, just that's the muscle memory. It's all, it's all pretty much there. There was somebody on Rogan's podcast that they like hike all the time, and their kids like hike with them, and they carry the kids, or the kids like just since they were toddlers. They just that's part of the deal, and they're just going to have grown up doing that, so it'll just be a 100% natural thing like that. But we're getting hopefully close to end of pandemic. Obviously vaccination numbers and everything are up, and COVID numbers are down. So I'm really hoping that there's a gym right down the street from us that has a basketball court. Like once that reopens, like I think that'll be really good, because that's always the one. That was like the one thing that I could do cardio wise. I enjoy playing basketball, so I would play for like 2-3 hours 3 times a week when I lived in San Diego on an outdoor court. So that was always kind of, I definitely am looking forward to when that's open again, and maybe getting a little bit back into shape now. But
well, you live in a good place too for like
sure.
Accountability and partners, and like just having a crew to go do stuff with. That's really invaluable.
Definitely. For sure.
What's a poker related thing that other people rave about that hasn't worked for you, and why do you think it didn't work?
I think meditation is probably one for me. I mean, I've tried it some and never really found too much benefit from it. I also I get, I don't know, I don't really get the like poker fatigue mentally, so to speak, that a lot of people do. I've always attributed this to like studying for the California bar, right? Like that was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my life, and it was like 13-hour mentally grinding days for 2 months straight, pretty much every day. And like I kind of feel like if I could get through that, if I get through that, poker's kind of nothing to me, whatever. But I've tried it. I did try to like put in the time and do whatever, and I just didn't personally see. Maybe there was benefit, but I didn't personally see or feel sort of the benefit from that. That's probably the one that jumps out to me.
Yeah, meditation's a big one in the poker scene, and
Sure.
I think that like it's just different strokes for different folks. Some
Sure. Oh,
really,
I definitely believe it works for people. I just don't think that my mind is. I don't think that that's the way that I'm wired, so to speak, for that to be helpful to me. Maybe I'm just wrong. Like maybe I should just continue to do it and whatever. But if I try something long enough and don't really see any benefit, I have a hard time just sort of that mentality that other people don't know what's best for me, right?
well, again, it like some things resonate, some things don't. Some things
Yeah.
you find value in, and some things you don't. I think that the only thing you can do is just consistently try different stuff to
Sure.
figure out what works for you specifically.
What's your poker related thing that you don't find benefit in that you think others do?
I don't do a lot of PIO. That's a thing.
Solver work. Yeah.
That's a thing that I don't put a lot of time into. Poker wise is just PIO. I'm the data driven aspect of poker makes a lot more sense to me than PIO does.
Yeah.
And I think maybe at some point in the future, solvers will be more precise than they are now. But now I just kind of view them as like giant calculators that are heavily reliant on you putting the right stuff in them.
I have it, and I have like I occasionally run some spots just to like look at stuff, whatever. But I find very little value in looking at it myself. I find a lot more value in there's like a study group that I'm in with some people that we meet once a week and go over some hands. And I think that my personal opinion is that the depths to which they want to go into like one hand on is kind of a waste of time. But like I still join in and listen because if there's some value to be had with that. And like they always when they look at a PIO spot, they always look at like they're trying to figure out not like what's the optimal thing to do here, but like look at everything and try and figure out why it's choosing like some hands to balance here with and stuff like that. So I find a lot more value in that than just like, what's the range that I should be c betting on XYZ board, or like why should this hand be in this double barrel range and this hand like why does it choose this card? And it has to do with a lot something that I don't think about very much at all, like or didn't think about very much at all into this, and I'm trying to get more in the mode of it. It chooses hands that like block or unblock like the backdoor flush draw like that the other person will have. So like it stuff like that I would never really think about, right? Like I see that constant. That's like a constant thing in PIO. That,
for sure. It finds a lot of.
It's choosing like when I'm looking at all the cards, right, on the turn, like what ones it bets and what ones it doesn't. And I'm like, why would King of Diamonds, Jack of Spades be different than King of Hearts, Jack of, like there's no draw with either of these things. Like, what I mean? It just has to do with that they block the backdoor float that they might have had on the flop or just something like that. But,
well, too, there's a full picture of things that are happening, right? And like the hands that it chooses to bluff with, it chooses because on various turns, it's a good combo to show up with on these specific turns so that you have enough bluffs to go along with your value on the flop. And like, there's a lot of these like interactive properties with like choosing what's is seemingly like random hands to check raise the flop with, but there's a reason in the future that we just don't really see or it's not clear to us.
Yeah. I was listening to Brocus actually last night. I was listening to an older podcast that he and Carlos were doing, and they're talking about a hand, and he's like Jack 9 suited on like Queen 5-3, Queen 5-4, the 2 of his suit. It's like, do we want to check raise this or just check call? And he's like, I just want to check call, I think, because If I check raise and then I hit a jack or a nine, I'm not really confident I'm good. But if I check call, I think I preserve my pair outs being good. That was just like, that was such a, like, that was just like, it's kind of like a simple thing to say, whatever, where it's like, by check raising, all of a sudden, like, if you hit a jack or a nine, you probably aren't good. But if you check call, a lot of time you are good when you when you hit those cards, whatever. So I kind of liked that. Just like, I do love when like little random things that are not like, it's not really all that profound, right? Like just something like that, but it just like kind of clicks and resonates with you, where you're like, wow, just hearing somebody say that out loud, might definitely have an effect. Where it's like, that's a spot that I definitely am in a lot, right?
Right. Gaining clarity or visibility on like any blind spots that you have, even like
Yeah,
small things like that, is just exciting. Like in my opinion, this
yeah,
is what makes me excited about poker, is like
yeah,
gaining visibility of something that I'd never even considered before. It's like, holy shit, that's awesome.
yeah.
Now I get to basically somewhere down the line put this in practice and see what
Yeah.
happens, and that's
Now,
fun.
now I'm going to put it in practice either too much and not and it won't work, and then I'll convince myself that it's bad, or I'll
The good news is,
under apply it.
yeah, the good news is the better you get at poker, though, the more of these things you can find and the more correctly you can apply them. The worse you are at poker, you get some information like that, and there's just so much room for misapplication in improper spots.
Yeah,
But yeah, just the better you get, it's like the information is more valuable because you know what you're supposed to do and what it's
yeah,
supposed to look like.
for sure.
What are some things you wish you said no to more often in poker?
Calling river bets. That's honestly, that like just bluff catching in a lot of spots, that because like the problem is, you don't have to be right like more than half the time, usually, ever. You don't have to be right that often.
Never more
Yeah,
than half.
never more than half, right? Exactly. You don't have to be right. Like, you don't have to, yeah, exactly. Never more than half. You don't have to be right all that often. And you like the like the reward mechanism in it when you are correct is so much stronger than the than the negative when you're incorrect, right? Like it's fun to hero call and be right, right? Like it's a really bad positive reward system, and it gives you, it gives you bad feedback, I think, in
Well,
that.
I was just gonna say, like, it's funny because some people are constructed the opposite way, in that they're always looking to find a fold
Yeah,
and happy to always find a fold when they don't need to be right so much. And somebody the other day, I made a tweet that said, basically, bad calls shouldn't give you nightmares, but bad folds should.
yeah.
And somebody replied with, looks on the surface to be a well thought out argument of, well, if I fold, I don't lose anything, and I consider that a win. And
Mm,
I would just make the argument that,
opportunity cost issue.
yeah, kind of, right? If you're playing $100,000 pot and you've got a royal, well, if you fold, technically you don't lose any money, but you kind of cost yourself money by folding, right? Like there is a loss associated with it if you're consistently folding the best hand, getting a good price inappropriately. Well, yeah, there's a cost. It's
So,
obvious.
somebody just said, how I learned to be less nitty in poker, even though I'm very nitty in my life, right? It's a professional poker player that's just, nitty in life. Like, how I learned is that I started viewing folding a hand, or like not putting money in that I could have won, as a loss, right? Like, not bluffing when you could win the pot that way, or not, making the call when you're right enough of the time to make it profitable. Like, you started viewing that as a loss rather than just putting money in and actually losing the hand. So it's exactly right. It's like the opportunity cost. I don't have that problem. I don't look for any reason to fold, but it's in our our mantra, if you will, thing that we say the most here is they always have it, and that's true at a lot of the it's true in a lot of the games that I've that we play. It's it's not necessarily true at some higher stakes and whatever, and it's sort of why people have that want to move up in stakes where they respect my raises, or move up in stakes where they actually have bluffs, or like whatever sort of thought. And it's like that's short-sighted thinking to think
Well,
that's the only.
yeah, it's also just nonsensical.
Well, yeah, of course, but the move up in stakes where they respect my raises thing is nonsensical. The idea of moving up in stakes where they actually have bluffs in spots where they like maybe should have bluffs is not nonsensical, but it's also not valuable to you, because if you understand that they don't have bluffs in the spot, like in the stakes that you're playing, if you understand that they for the most part do not have bluffs, or you can identify those who do not have bluffs, like you can just print money by folding against them. That's just the way that it is.
Right.
And when you're calling an old guy's check raise on the turn with one pair, it's it's very silly.
Yeah, I mean, the exploit is obviously just a fold, right? Like that's what good poker play looks like. And
it's very weird though. It's a very weird concept for people to get that you exploit nitty players by folding. It seems weird because they think I'm not winning money by folding, but you are. You're not. You're avoiding loss by folding, and that's literally winning money. Like you've entered this pot, you're given an option point, you choose to fold when you are not good. That's winning money.
I think it has to do with like sunk cost and emotional investment along with monetary investment, because like nobody's going to say like they fold deuce 7 off under the gun and like struggled to do so, even though technically they just lost the hand without putting any money in the pot. Do they consider that they just lost the hand in the same way that like you make a good fold on the turn, like you technically lose the hand, but you don't lose more money, which is kind of the whole point of playing poker?
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I do find I find it like annoying when I have, like, I'm like on the button with 8s or 9s, right? And like it goes raise under the gun, call +1, 3-bet from +2, and you just like have to fold, right? Like I think that I haven't put any money in the pot in that spot, and I definitely I get that a little bit, the sort of without the sunk cost thing, but there's an attachment. There's an attachment, right, to certain hands. You see, it's why people will tell you that they lose more than 80% of the time with, or that they lose more than 20% of the time with aces versus an under pair. It's just because they think in their head that they don't understand this, but in their head they think they should win 100% of the time in that spot. So anytime that they lose, it's all of a sudden it's down to 50% of the time total it's the time that they lost, and then all the other times are the two halves. Like that's.
Yeah, it's like a weatherman. I saw on Twitter the other day that this just kind of blew my mind, but a weatherman predicted sunshine 80%, 20% chance of rain, and it rained. And a lot of the consensus in the Twitter world was, well, if my weatherman said an 80% chance of sunshine and it rained, I would find a new weatherman. And it's like, don't you know how percentages work?
He didn't say 100%.
Right. 80% is not 100, and 20% is actually a very real and big chance of something happening.
Ask any poker player. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just like.
Yeah, I very rarely say anything like this, but I like at this spot. This is maybe like 3 years ago. It was like limp. I raised like $15 with ace queen, and this lady behind me makes it like $140 or something like that. Whatever, like it folds back to me, and I'm just sitting here, and I was like, what the hell? And I was like, all right, I just fold whatever, and she like proudly tables aces, and then she said, I just wanted to take it down now. I pretty much always lose. I pretty much always lose with aces. I'm happy to just take down the blinds. And I just said, wow, if I lost with aces that much, I would probably find a new hobby. It's like one of the one times that I like cracked and said something like that with whatever. But I was just like, I couldn't take it. Like this is like I already was like upset about having ace queen suited there and having to fold. Like this is absurd. I was thankful that she let me know, but it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, she lets you off the hook, and
exactly.
It burns into our brains the times that we lose with aces,
right.
And because like we just expect to win. I mean, I can even tell you, like, in my mind right now, a hand that I played like a week ago, I got 3-bet with aces, I flatted in position, and dude ran out a straight flush. And I remember losing and thinking to myself, oh, that was unfortunate. But like it sticks in the mind. It's not something that I even gave two thoughts about afterwards, really.
Of course.
But I remember it just because like when your aces get cracked or a set gets cracked or you flop the nut flush or the nut straight, like you remember when they lose.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with tournaments. I just on this past Sunday made another semi-deep run in the circuit event, and there was like it was final 3 tables and got ace jack in versus queen jack, and dude flopped the flush. I mean, it was like for third in chips, with final 3 tables and whatever. That's the problem with tournaments, is that all these spots are not created equally. And in a cash game, they are all created equally. There's the dollar value of them, and tournaments, it's just brutal when you lose some massive equity spot, especially when you're a big favorite. It really makes you not want to play them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it hinges just on purely
luck management is
running good when you need to run good, right? Like
luck management is the concept that Melissa, that's her username on WSOP.com, actually, is luck management.
Yes, you got to manage the luck.
You have to you're gonna have to lose like an 80-20 some of the time, so you might as well lose it when the guy that shoved has 4 big blinds. This is like, oh, she's like actively roots against herself in those spots. It's like, because you have to lose it 20% of the time, so why can't this be the 20%? Good luck management.
There you go. Easy to understand concept. I mean, I've got friends
difficult to implement, but easy to understand.
Difficult to execute for sure. I have friends that have played, for like millions of dollars up top and like just lose like a 60-40 to bust out in 7th. And the guy that wins is like the overwhelming chip leader and takes the tournament down. And it's like, those are kind of the ones that you need as a multi-table tournament poker professional.
Yep, that they are.
What's a project you're working on that's near and dear to your heart?
Not actively working on too much right now. I'm actually considering just considering starting a podcast if I can get Golden Blazer on board with it. But I asked him the other day, and I don't know if I can convince him or not. So maybe you need to work on him, unless you don't want the competition.
Competition? Get out of here.
Yeah, right. But yeah, no, I think I'm not actively working on too much other than just my poker game at the moment. So not too much there. But yeah, that's I did think about that the other day. I was like, man, this is sort of had the fancy cat meme, the newspapers in there. Like, I should start a podcast. It's just like,
I mean, you mentioned earlier the stream of consciousness, getting more involved in content creation. I think a podcast would be a good avenue to just get it out there.
It definitely is up my alley, and I think he and I would mesh well together to do one. So maybe I'll lean on him a little bit more, and we'll see what we can do.
Yeah, let me know. And if you do, by the time this episode comes out, I'll certainly put a link to the show page and do what I can.
For sure.
Cool, man. It's been great having you on the show. And just final question for the listener, if they want to learn more about you on the World Wide Web, where can they go?
Twitter would be the best place. That's at jsmith84poker, or Twitch. Again, I stream a couple of times a week, or at least once a week, at twitch.tv/jsmith84poker. So easy one to remember there. But yeah, those would be the two best places to catch me.
Awesome, man. Thank you for your time, your energy. Best of luck in the live streets. And yeah, we'll have you back on in a little while. Maybe a year or so after live poker opens back up in the world. We're talking about the year where we got to do stuff outside instead of the year where we didn't.
Great catching up, man. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter, join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter at CPG Podcast.